My cousin faked her miscarriages to steal my husband. My cousin Natalie started collecting fake miscarriages like vintage designer handbags, all for show, all to steal my husband. I'm Ashley, and I decided to make her baby shower absolutely unforgettable. Let me paint you the picture. Natalie is my aunt's daughter who grew up in a cramped apartment in Queens, while we lived comfortably in Westchester. She studied my life like she was cramming for the SATs, taking notes on everything from my workout routine to my favorite Starbucks order. When I married Connor, a successful investment banker with Irish roots, she suddenly developed a thing for men with Celtic names and Wall Street jobs. The obsession started small. She'd copy my Instagram captions word for word, show up wearing knockoff versions of my outfits, even started going to my SoulCycle classes uninvited. But things got weird when I announced my pregnancy at our annual 4th of July barbecue. I'd planned this beautiful reveal, giving my mom a custom world's best grandma apron with little baby footprints on it. Before Mom could even unfold the apron completely, Natalie literally shrieked across the patio, "Oh my God, I'm pregnant too." Strange, considering I'd literally watched her pop a Plan B in my guest bathroom that very morning after her Uber driver from the night before had dropped her off at dawn. That's when she started infiltrating my life like some demented reality TV villain. She showed up to my prenatal yoga class at Equinox, dramatically clutching her still flat stomach and moaning about morning sickness while scarfing down an everything bagel with extra cream cheese. She posted daily bump updates on social media even though there was no bump to speak of. She even faked ultrasound photos using images she'd stolen from Google, posting them with captions about her rainbow baby, despite never having been pregnant before in her life. The woman had the audacity to join my pregnancy support group on Facebook, sharing elaborate stories about her cravings for pickles and ice cream while I was actually dealing with real hormonal changes and genuine pregnancy symptoms. She'd comment on every single one of my posts with "OMG same. Pregnancy twins." It was like having a stalker who happened to share DNA with me. But here's where things took a truly sinister turn. While I was building a nursery and picking out baby names with Connor, Natalie was apparently building an entire fantasy life around my husband. She'd started showing up at his office building during lunch, claiming she just happened to be in the neighborhood. She'd post cryptic Instagram stories from restaurants we frequented, always with captions like "lunch with my favorite guy," but never showing who she was actually with. Connor thought it was harmless cousin rivalry. "She's just excited about being pregnant at the same time as you," he'd say, completely missing the calculated nature of her behavior. He didn't see how she'd time her grocery store visits to coincide with ours, didn't notice how she'd conveniently need rides whenever his schedule was free. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs more clearly. But I was caught up in the joy of my first pregnancy, trusting in the sanctity of family bonds, believing that surely no one could be that manipulative, that calculating, that downright evil. I had no idea how far she was willing to go to steal my entire life. Then came the worst day of my life, and Natalie turned it into her greatest performance. I lost my baby at 16 weeks. Real loss. Real D&C procedure. Real, overwhelming, suffocating grief that felt like drowning in broad daylight. Connor held me as I sobbed in that sterile hospital room, my body betraying everything I'd dreamed of, everything we'd planned for. And there was Natalie in the hospital corridor, wearing a stolen patient wristband, clutching her stomach dramatically, telling anyone who'd listen that she was miscarrying too. Same day. Same time. What were the odds? The nurse actually asked if we were twins because our symptoms were so similar. I wanted to scream that there were no symptoms for Natalie because there was no pregnancy, but grief had stolen my voice. I could barely breathe, let alone fight. While I spent the next week in bed, unable to eat or shower or even look at the nursery we'd started, Natalie launched into full bereaved mother mode. She posted heartbreaking Facebook statuses about losing her little angel, created a Pinterest board called Remembering Baby Thompson, and even started a GoFundMe for pregnancy loss support that raised over $3,000 from sympathetic relatives and friends. But she didn't stop there. When I finally found the strength to join a grief support group at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, because I needed help processing this devastating loss, she showed up the very next week. She sat in that circle of genuinely hurting women and spun elaborate tales about not just one loss, but 3 previous miscarriages I'd never heard about. The twisted part? She was copying my exact words. When I talked about the guilt, the feeling that my body had failed me, the way certain songs on the radio could trigger a breakdown, she'd repeat those same sentiments the following week, claiming them as her own experience. It was like watching someone wear your skin as a costume. Meanwhile, She started her campaign to comfort my grieving husband. She'd show up at our house in Beverly Hills with homemade lasagna and chicken casseroles, always dressed in these tiny tank tops and yoga pants, always timing her visits for when I was at therapy appointments or work. She'd leave her fake fertility journal conveniently open on our coffee table, filled with Connor's name doodled in hearts alongside made-up cycle tracking data. "She's just being supportive during our difficult time," Connor would say when I expressed concern. But I'd find long text conversations between them on his phone about shared grief and understanding loss together. She was using my tragedy as a bonding experience with my husband. The support group leader, Dr. Martinez, eventually pulled me aside after a session. "Ashley, I need to speak with you privately about Natalie's stories. Some of the medical details she's sharing don't add up. The timelines are inconsistent, and frankly, some of what she's describing isn't physiologically possible." That same night, I found her iPad left behind on our kitchen counter after another one of her comfort visits. It was still open to her TikTok drafts folder. My hands shook as I scrolled through videos of her at rooftop parties and beach clubs, all timestamped during her supposed miscarriages. Shots of tequila, dancing on tables, captions like "living my best life" and "hot girl summer continues." The betrayal cut deeper than the pregnancy loss itself. What I discovered on that iPad was just the tip of the iceberg. Natalie had been documenting her entire campaign to steal my husband, and she was getting closer to her goal every day. Her text messages revealed the master plan. Screenshots of flirty conversations with someone named Blake, her spin instructor at Barry's boot camp apparently, where she bragged about playing the long game with Connor. She'd mapped out his entire routine, his morning coffee run to Joe Coffee on 85th Street, his Thursday evening networking events at the University Club, even his weekend gym schedule at Equinox. But the most chilling discovery was a folder labeled Connor Research. She had screenshots of his LinkedIn, photos of his college friends, even his work calendar that she'd somehow accessed. She knew more about my husband's daily life than I did, and she was using that information to orchestrate coincidental encounters. The messages with Blake revealed her strategy. Phase 1, gain sympathy through shared pregnancy. Phase 2, bond through shared loss. Phase 3, be his shoulder to cry on. Phase 4, profit. She actually wrote profit, like this was some kind of business plan. I confronted Connor that night, showing him the evidence, but he dismissed it as girl drama. He couldn't see what was right in front of his face, that his wife's cousin was systematically dismantling our marriage while wearing a mask of family concern. 6 months after my loss, at my grandmother's 80th birthday party at Tavern on the Green, Natalie made her grand announcement. She clinked her champagne flute filled with sparkling apple cider and stood up in her tight emerald dress, one hand dramatically placed on her still flat stomach. "I have wonderful news to share with everyone," she announced, her voice carrying across the private dining room. "I'm pregnant with twins. Due in March." The room erupted in congratulations, but when Uncle Pete asked who the father was, she turned those calculating green eyes directly toward Connor and said, "Someone who held me through my darkest moments. Someone who understands the value of family." Connor nearly choked on his Manhattan. Natalie gave him this slow, knowing wink that made my blood freeze. The implication was crystal clear to everyone at that table. She wanted them to think Connor was the father. That's when everything clicked into place. The constant visits, the shared grief sessions, the way she'd positioned herself as his emotional support system while I was falling apart. She'd been grooming him, and from the guilty look on his face, it had worked. Later that night, I found Connor on our terrace, staring out at the city skyline with a whiskey in his hand. When I asked him directly if anything had happened between them, he couldn't look me in the eye. "It wasn't supposed to mean anything," he whispered. "I was grieving too, Ashley. She understood what we were going through, and you were so distant after the loss. It just happened. My marriage was over. My cousin had won." But as I stood there watching my world collapse, something cold and calculating settled in my chest. If Natalie wanted to play games, I'd show her what a real player looked like. Time to give her a baby shower she'd never forget. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I prefer mine served at exactly the right temperature to cause maximum damage. I volunteered to plan Natalie's baby shower with the kind of manic enthusiasm that should have been a red flag to anyone paying attention. "Oh sweetie, you don't have to do that," she purred when I offered, but I could see the wheels turning behind those fake innocent eyes. She wanted me to plan it because she thought it meant I'd accepted defeat, that I was rolling over and letting her have my life. How wrong she was. I threw myself into party planning like it was my full-time job. I insisted on handling everything, the guest list, decorations, catering, even the entertainment. Most importantly, I convinced her to let me create a special commemorative video presentation about her journey to motherhood. It'll be so touching, I told her over lunch at the Plaza Food Hall, watching her pick at a salad while pretending to have pregnancy nausea. A beautiful tribute to your strength through all those losses, leading up to this miracle pregnancy. She practically glowed at the attention. That sounds perfect, Ashley. You're such an amazing cousin for doing this after everything we've both been through. The audacity of this woman never ceased to amaze me. While she was busy shopping for maternity dresses she didn't need and posting daily bump updates that showed no actual bump, I was conducting the investigation of a lifetime. I'd learned a few things about digital forensics during my marketing career, and Natalie had left a digital trail wider than the Hudson River. First, I accessed her fertility tracking app. She'd foolishly used the same password for everything. Connor 2024. 2 years of data showing absolutely zero pregnancies, but plenty of documented proof that she'd been sexually active with multiple partners throughout her supposed grieving periods. Next, I traced those Google image ultrasounds she'd been posting. Each one had a digital watermark leading back to medical websites and stock photo services. I had screenshots of the original images with timestamps proving when she downloaded them. Her employment records were particularly illuminating. Natalie worked as a medical office assistant at Manhattan Women's Health, which explained how she'd gotten those authentic-looking hospital bracelets and medical supplies she'd used in her performances. A little digging revealed she'd been written up multiple times for inventory discrepancies, essentially stealing supplies for her fake miscarriage theatrics. But the most damaging evidence came from her relationship with Blake, her spin instructor. Through some creative social media sleuthing, I discovered he had no idea she was claiming to be pregnant. Their relationship was purely physical, Tuesday and Thursday morning sessions that had nothing to do with Barry's boot camp. I also found security footage. Blake lived in a doorman building on the Upper West Side, and his doorman, Carlos, had been documenting everyone who came and went for building security. Natalie's face was clearly visible in dozens of timestamps that corresponded exactly with her supposed pregnancy symptoms and grief periods. The final piece of my puzzle was the most satisfying. I invited Blake to the baby shower. I'm planning a surprise celebration for a mutual friend, I told him over the phone. She mentioned you make incredible 7-layer dip for potlucks. Would you mind bringing some? It would mean so much to her. He was delighted to help, completely unaware he was about to become the star witness in my case against Natalie. The baby shower was held at my uncle's restaurant, Benedetto's, in Little Italy, a family establishment with old-world charm and absolutely no escape routes. 60 guests filled the private dining room. Family members, college friends, co-workers, and neighbors who'd all been following Natalie's pregnancy journey with genuine excitement and support. Natalie arrived fashionably late, wearing a flowing pink maternity dress with a "finally a mommy" tiara she'd ordered from Amazon. She practically floated through the room, one hand constantly resting on her stomach, accepting congratulations and gifts with the grace of someone who truly believed she deserved this moment. The decorations were perfect, pink and gold balloons, a dessert table featuring gender reveal cupcakes, and a beautiful backdrop for photos that read Natalie's miracle babies. I'd spared no expense making this look like the baby shower of dreams. Connor sat at a corner table, looking increasingly uncomfortable as the afternoon wore on. He kept checking his phone and avoiding eye contact with everyone, particularly me. The guilt was eating him alive, but not enough to confess the truth. Blake arrived precisely on time with his famous 7-layer dip, completely confused about why he'd been invited to a baby shower but happy to support someone he cared about. When he saw Natalie across the room, his face shifted from confusion to complete bewilderment. "Wait," he whispered to me, "isn't that the girl from my spin class? I didn't know she was pregnant." "Oh, she's very pregnant," I replied with a smile that would have scared a shark. "In fact, why don't you go say hello? I'm sure she'd love to see you." The gift opening ceremony was a masterclass in performance art. Natalie oohed and awed over every tiny outfit, every bottle, every stuffed animal, building up the emotional investment of every person in that room. Her mother wiped away tears of joy. My grandmother blessed the unborn babies in Italian. Even the waitstaff stopped to watch this touching family moment. Before we cut the cake, I announced, standing up with a microphone I'd borrowed from the restaurant's events coordinator, I'd like to share a special video presentation I made about Natalie's incredible journey to motherhood. The lights dimmed. The projector screen descended. Natalie beamed with anticipation as the opening credits rolled, a story of love, loss, and miracles, Natalie's path to motherhood. It started beautifully, childhood photos of Natalie and me together, family vacations, graduations, all set to a touching instrumental soundtrack. The audience smiled and nodded, completely drawn into the narrative. Then came the fertility app screenshots. Here we can see Natalie's fertility tracking over the past 2 years, I narrated cheerfully as the data appeared on screen, showing 0 pregnancies but plenty of sexual activity during her supposed grieving. Periods. The room grew quiet. People squinted at the screen, trying to process what they were seeing. Next, the watermarked Google ultrasound images she'd been posting, side by side with their original sources from medical websites. These are the ultrasound photos Natalie shared with us, and here are their original sources on the internet, I continued in the same cheery tone. Natalie's face had gone completely white. She started to stand up, but her mother pulled her back down. Wait, there's more, I smiled. The best part is coming up. The TikTok videos started playing. Natalie at rooftop bars, doing shots, dancing on tables, all time-stamped during her supposed miscarriages. Then the security footage from Blake's building played on the big screen. That's when all hell broke loose. The room erupted like Mount Vesuvius. Blake stood up first, his face a mixture of confusion and horror. Wait, Natalie, you told me you were single. What the hell is going on here? His voice cut through the shocked silence like a knife, and suddenly everyone was talking at once. Natalie's mother, Aunt Rosa, screamed across the room, You lied about dead babies? Madonna mia, what kind of monster are you? Connor jumped up from his table, his chair clattering backward. Ashley, what is this? What are you doing? But the guilt written across his face told everyone exactly what he'd done. My uncle Marco, built like a linebacker even at 60, stepped between Connor and the exit. In our family, you don't run from your problems. The security footage is particularly interesting, I continued, my voice carrying over the chaos as more clips played. These timestamps show Natalie leaving Blake's apartment building every Tuesday and Thursday morning throughout her supposed pregnancy. Notice how she's carrying the same yoga mat she claimed was for prenatal classes. Natalie finally found her voice, but it came out as a desperate shriek. This is all lies. Ashley is jealous because I found happiness with Connor. She's trying to ruin my life. Your life. I laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. Natalie, you stole my life piece by piece. You faked miscarriages to bond with my husband. You took money from our family under false pretenses. You joined my grief support group and traumatized women who were actually suffering real losses. Blake's girlfriend, a tall redhead I'd seen in his Instagram photos, had been standing quietly near the dessert table. She suddenly picked up the bowl of 7-layer dip, all 2 pounds of it, and dumped it directly on Natalie's tiara. 2 years, she shouted as beans and sour cream dripped down Natalie's face. 2 years you've been sleeping with my boyfriend, and you told him you were single. The room was pure chaos now. Cousin Vinny was live streaming everything on Instagram. Grandma Benedetta was crossing herself and muttering prayers in Italian about demons and false prophets. Uncle Pete was on the phone with someone, probably a lawyer, because that's what our family does when things get legally complicated. Natalie tried to run for the door, but the combination of her fake pregnancy dress, the slippery dip covering the floor, and her ridiculous heels proved to be her downfall. Literally. She slipped spectacularly, arms flailing, and landed face first in her pink gender reveal cake. The cake that was supposed to reveal the sex of babies that didn't exist. The symbolism was perfect. The medical supply theft records are particularly damning, I continued, because I wasn't finished destroying her yet. Turns out stealing hospital bracelets and pregnancy test materials from your workplace is not just unethical, it's a felony. Connor was trying to push through the crowd toward the exit, but my cousin Tony blocked his path. Where you going, Connor? Don't you want to congratulate the father of the twins? Blake looked like he was about to throw up. Twins? What twins? I never got anyone pregnant. We always used protection. Natalie lay there in the ruins of her pink cake, covered in 7-layer dip, her tiara askew, finally exposed for exactly what she was, a pathological liar who'd built her entire identity around stealing someone else's life. Justice had never tasted so sweet. The aftermath was more satisfying than I ever could have imagined. Within hours of the baby shower disaster, videos were circulating on every social media platform. #BabyShowerExposed was trending on TikTok. Natalie became the poster child for everything wrong with fake pregnancy announcements and social media deception. Connor, faced with the undeniable evidence of Natalie's lies and his own infidelity, had a complete breakdown. He begged for forgiveness, promising to cut all ties with Natalie and rebuild our marriage. But some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. I filed for divorce the following Monday. The legal consequences for Natalie were swift and merciless. Her employer, Manhattan Women's Health, fired her immediately after reviewing security footage that showed her stealing medical supplies over several months. The district attorney's office pressed charges for theft, fraud, and misuse of medical equipment. The GoFundMe money had to be returned to all the donors who'd been scammed by her fake pregnancy loss story. But the most poetic justice came from an unexpected source, the law itself. Before Connor knew the truth about the pregnancy being fake, he'd signed paternity papers that Natalie had forged, listing him as the father. When Blake's twins were actually born 6 months later, because apparently her relationship with him had produced real results, Connor was legally obligated to pay child support due to those fraudulent documents. My divorce lawyer, James Wellington, was a silver-haired shark who ate lying cheaters for breakfast. He ensured I got the house in Beverly Hills, alimony that would keep me comfortable for years, and enough liquid assets to start fresh anywhere I wanted. "Your cousin did you a favor," James told me over coffee at our final meeting. "She exposed your husband's true character before you wasted more years on him." James was right about more than just the legal aspects. 6 months later, we started dating. A year after that, I was genuinely pregnant, not fake Instagram pregnant, but actually growing a human being who would inherit both my stubbornness and his legal mind. I ran into Natalie last month at the Target in Westchester. She was pushing a double stroller with Blake's twins, looking exhausted and working a food delivery job to make ends meet. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes were stained with baby formula, and she had the hollow-eyed look of someone whose lies had finally caught up with them. She tried to approach me, probably to apologize or ask for some kind of reconciliation, but I simply held up my hand and pointed to my name tag from my shopping basket. It read, Ashley Wellington, my new married name, my new life, my new beginning built on truth instead of deception. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Sometimes the best revenge isn't a single moment of dramatic exposure, it's living well, authentically, and honestly while watching the liars struggle with the consequences of their choices. Connor still sends pathetic text messages occasionally, begging for another chance. Blake's twins are beautiful, healthy, and expensive. Natalie delivers DoorDash orders while James and I plan our nursery and debate baby names that actually matter because this baby is real. My name was never Natalie, and it never would be. I learned the difference between performing a life and actually living one. And that made all the difference.